We did have a nice close on Friday, up more than 250 points, and so much data that goes into that. Danny set it up with the Powell Pause, and we have talked about this in the past, but there is some more information that came out this week that we thought we would like to share.
Yeah, so when Chair Powell spoke on Friday, the markets really liked what he said. Basically, he sat down in front of a bunch of college students and told them that he thought monetary policy was well into restrictive territory. That means that he's probably not contemplating pushing for further rate hikes. So it really does boil down to how long will this pause be? Is it a pause that refreshes, or is it a pause that's just going to create more damage for the overall economy?
And that's what we're going to have to watch as we go into 2024. There is certainly a lot of economists, Brian, who are starting to talk about rate cuts in 2024, but that's a dual-edged sword.
It really is, because in the past, when the Fed has cut rates, it's because they've already held rates high for too long, too much damage was done, and so they had to reverse course. Now, there are a couple instances in history where the Fed has actually gotten it right. Who knows? Maybe this will be one of them. It remains to be seen. But in 94 to 95 and then in 98, the Fed, they had a pause, and then they cut rates a little bit because they actually noticed ahead of time that the economic momentum was fading too fast. We have to see how preemptive the Fed is going to be. So far, Chair Powell hasn't really talked too much about trying to be preemptive or proactive about trying to get in front of an economic slowdown.
And that's generally not what they do. They look at facts, which is really looking in the rear view mirror. But we did get some data this week that could help his argument, and that was really what came out of what's called the Beige Book.
Yes, so the Beige Book is this collection of anecdotes from around the United States, 12 Federal Reserve districts. 6 of those districts said that economic activity actually fell. Now, that's just a 1-month snapshot, so a lot of people like to look at, an economic contraction of multiple months. It has to be really prolonged to count as a recession. But this was one of the first times that the Beige Book in a long time said that there's actually been an economic contraction across a rather broad swath of the U.S. economy.
And you take a look at that and you try to align that with really what's happening when the consumer still is spending. We're seeing the spending reports that came out from Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and it really doesn't align with that Beige Book, though.
No, it doesn't. The consumer has, I think, befuddled a lot of economists as far as how strong spending has been. Black Friday sales at brick and mortar, that is, if you go to a physical store, was only up about 2.5% year over year. Most of the time, you would expect that to be up significantly more. Online, however, was up close to about 8% year over year. So there is this growing divide in the retail space that continues. I'd like to think that with my shopping that most of it is online. I like the convenience, having things delivered. I kind of minimize the things I need to go to a store because I don't like dealing with parking. But, I think a lot of people are still going out to those stores looking for the discounts. That was another thing in the Beige Book that was pointed out. Consumers are becoming increasingly more price sensitive. And so if the price in the store is cheaper than what you can find online, people are still willing to truck through that parking lot to get through the doors.
Mrs. Spano clearly is doing her part of it. She came in and I said, "What's going on?" She says, "I'm just trying to keep the economy going. I do listen to the show," she said. And finally, I just want to get to this last thing, which is another economic number, which is called the PMI. We saw a number that came out of the Chicago PMI, which was rather positive.
Yeah, it was. And that's another interesting thing. You have these regional divergences where Chicago Purchasing Manager Index, hey, it's positive. But then we also then got the Institute of Supply Management's, which is broader for the whole United States, still being in contraction. You've gotten Richmond numbers, Dallas numbers, all these areas. So really, is it a recession? Or maybe it really depends on which industry you're in and which area you live in.